Okay, it's 10 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. If everyone would rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Good morning. I'm calling to order our meeting of the SaddleBrooke 2 Board of Directors. I'll introduce myself first. My name is Therese Butler, and I'm president of our board.
I'm Joyce Howard. I'm the treasurer.
Mark Eckert, the assistant treasurer.
Good morning. I'm Walter. I'm the assistant executive director.
Diane Flores, recording secretary.
I'm Joe Ryman, senior vice president of the board.
Dan Lendiger, vice president.
Chuck Hill, secretary.
Todd Grimm, director.
Just for a point of order, there is one addition to the agenda, and that will be to approve the 2022 board goals, and that falls under new business. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and get started. This is a standard board meeting, so we will be having reports by the assistant executive director and staff. And as a point of reference, questions can be asked when we have a motion on the floor, and questions are specific to that motion. If you do have questions, we ask you to please come up to one of the microphones and state your name and your unit and lot number. And you have up to 2 minutes to speak. After the meeting, for just questions in general, after we adjourn the meeting, we'll be here to take questions in pretty much the same way. So with that, I'm turning this over to Walter.
Good morning. What I'd like to do is just give you a general overview of a lot of stuff that's going on with the staff. And after I give you that general overview, then we'll hear from Alan from Food and Beverage. And then following him will be Laurie from our HR department. And then to wrap up the staff presentations will be Terry reviewing the monthly financials. All right, so I got a few things to go over here. In terms of projects that are going on, usually I stand up and give you a slideshow with a bunch of pictures. I didn't quite have time to put that together. So I'm just gonna address some of these just verbally. Right now, one of the newest projects we just completed was getting new air walls into the ballroom. That's those air walls that you can move and divide the Mountain View ballroom into 3 sections. They were quite old, and we were able to get those installed. And as far as if I can believe the pictures I've seen, they're operable. So I think we're good there. We're finishing up a couple of roofing projects that we started last year. I noticed them working in the arts and crafts area and finishing up the roof there. And the mesquite roof is already completed. Also, we are currently crack sealing a lot of the roads. So we have the teams out there now crack sealing, not today because of the rain, but yesterday, the last 2 days, they were out crack sealing, just starting that project. So that's ongoing. One of the bigger projects we have in our technology department is we are replacing our club management software, which currently we use North Star. We are going to be replacing them with a company called Total E Integrated. And so that's something that we'll be working on. That's the system that keeps track of all the residents, your properties, your finances, and all of that. So we're working on bringing them on board, and that's going to be a good 5-month process as we bring them on board. In the common area section, again, they are working hard, working on the roadsides, working along Mountain View Boulevard. The drainage team is working on erosion control, and they're up along Peregrine right now. The folks that work behind the walls and clean up behind the walls, they're working in basically up at the preserve, unit 42, 43, 44A and 45. And if you haven't met her, we have a new employee. Her name is Sue O'Donnell, and she's been hired to handle the special land request and service requests. So she's up and running. And so, we had Bob Bulikowski who has retired. So we brought on Sue, and she's taking those requests on personally. So you'll probably be meeting her if you put in any of these requests. For golf course maintenance, they're working on the POA and down here at the Mountain View, killing that off. I don't think that's much of a problem. They got a pretty good handle on that. They're also working on line of sight throughout the golf courses, trimming back trees or removing trees, whatever it takes to improve the line of sight for the golfers. Paul had just attended the GCSAA conference in San Diego just last week. So he was able to see some new stuff and also talk to some of the irrigation companies that are out there, just collecting information, anything that can help us with our golf courses. And finally, Mountain View pre-bid conference, and this is in reference to the hard reset at the Mountain View golf course. And that conference is still scheduled for March 22nd. In the area of golf operations, I was looking at some of their information. Interestingly, these fitting days over the last 3 days or the last 3 years, each year we've increased and done better each year. For example, in 2019, we had revenue of about 101,000. And in 2021, we had 129,000, and things are going strong for this year. So we look forward to some good revenue there with the fitting days. They also got actually the sip and swing was supposed to be today, but that was rescheduled for March 2nd, of course, with all the rain. Probably didn't want to be out there on the golf course swinging. Maybe you'd rather be inside sipping. So, but that's moved to March 2nd. And just to kind of overview, by the end of January this year, revenues for the golf course were at 1.7 million. And this is actually better than we did the whole year of 2021. So they're doing good. And for rounds of golf, pretty much compared to last year, we're about the same as we were for January last year. In the fitness center, if you haven't noticed, Jeanette's doing a great job. She's offering different types of classes, different types of formats, actually. And one of the latest formats that she's bringing on board is called a session-based class. And session-based class is a class that, has maybe 4 or maybe 6 sessions that you go to, and it's a progressive. Each session you go to, you learn more and build on what you just learned. So they have a session-based class starting here in March for kettlebells. So that's something I haven't seen down here, but I see it at a lot of other fitness centers are kettlebells. So that'll be an interesting class if you're interested in learning how to use kettlebells. Again, they're doing great. All the classes continue to fill up. In fact, in January, we had our best revenue generating month since I've been here for the fitness center, just over $20,000 for the month of January. In the patrol area, a couple things going on. I know Sheriff Mark Lamb is coming to the area. It looks like right now, I think it's going to be hosted over at HOA 1. And that's going to be on March 28th, if you're interested in hearing from Sheriff Lamb. In addition to that, there's going to be, we have these every once in a while, a coffee with a cop. If you've ever attended one of those, again, that's going to be on March 3rd, and that's going to be over at the Agave Lounge over at HOA 1. Patrol, again, doing our, working through our budget this year. So we went and got a new truck for Patrol. So Patrol has a new truck on the road, and then they'll pass one of their older trucks down to the facility department. Other things that Patrol is working on. If you aren't aware, we have cameras in most of our facilities, and Patrol is working on updating those cameras. We're still waiting, again, with COVID and supply chain delays. We're waiting for pieces of equipment so we can finish up that project this year. And other things we're working on the line of sight. When you drive up to the intersections, we did this about probably 3 years ago. So Patrol's doing it again. They're going out, they're actually going to every intersection, every angle that you can come up to that intersection, and they're checking the line of sight. They're noting, where there's blind spots. And then we're gonna approach, either we'll have the ALC approach residents if it's on a resident property and that vegetation needs to be cut back. If it's on common area property, we'll talk to Anthony, our common area supervisor, and have him cut the vegetation back. So we're working through that right now. And if you didn't know it, the little shack that goes up to the preserve when you turn off of SaddleBrooke Boulevard onto Catalina Hills, that little shack has sat empty for quite a while. We've moved our patrol captain up there, and she has made that her office. So you'll probably see her up there or a patrol truck parked there many days. All right, just to wrap things up before we get over to food and beverage, Liz, who is our lifestyle coordinator, looks like things are picking up there. They've got 2 confirmed weddings already booked for the year, October, November. They have others that may book, but those are firm. The 2 one in October and one in November. St. Patrick's Day Festival tickets, I think they went on sale yesterday, so get your tickets for St. Patrick's Day Festival. They did have a they had Valentine's events on the 13th and 14th, and apparently those went off real well. The live music was well received at the Mountain View on the 14th. Something else you might want to be aware of is the Sonoran Desert Museum is hosting plant walks, and I think you have to get tickets for this. The information's on the web, but they have a plant walk on the 22nd of February and the 28th of February. So if you're interested in that or spread the word, there's still tickets available to do that if you want to learn about the plants here in the desert. And finally, this Saturday there's a show. Spinfony, I think that's what it's called, Spinfony. But I looked on the web and looked at it. It looked pretty interesting. Some good-looking ladies swinging around their violins and cellos. So, I mean, it looks like a pretty interesting show. So get your tickets for this Saturday. And that concludes at least my general overview. So we're going to go into having Alan from Food and Beverage, and then after him, Laurie for HR, and then Terry will wrap us up with a financial review.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alan. I'm the Director of Food and Beverage. How's it going, everyone? So I'm going to give you a short synopsis of what's going on and exactly the going on of food and beverage. As of today, we have our new executive chef going through his orientation. So he will start on the 18th. So that's Friday. So that's very, very good news for me. So my core set of my management team is set. We're going to be excited to have him come in. He's coming from Hilton El Con and Dove Mountain Brewery, so he comes with a multitude of experience of doing large banquets, as well as a la carte dining, and a little bit of higher end dining. Some upcoming closures that I want to go over is March 1st. We have a very, very large banquet. We're looking at 300 plus people for this banquet. We just don't have the staff in our banquet department to facilitate that. So we have to pull from Mountain View and we have to pull from Mesquite to facilitate this banquet. So that is the reason for that closure. And then we also have February 21st server alcohol training. This training is for all front of house and my managers for Preserve, Mesquite, and Mountain View. I try to mitigate the closure as much as possible. So we will be open for breakfast that day, and we will close at 10:30 so they can get into training, and then we'll be open for dinner at the bistro. These closures, I really do. They're not willy-nilly. I try to make these closures as easy as possible and try to mitigate the hours we're closed for. Fun stuff. We have St. Patrick's Day Festival coming up. We're booking live music for that. We'll have food booths, alcohol booths, lawn games, and just good fun. This will be the first festival that I'm coming back to, so I'm really excited about this one. With the new chef, so it should be pretty fun. So it'll be a good time to get out there, enjoy the weather, and enjoy St. Patrick's Day. I've been working with the golf pros to get what I'm calling the tailgater, which is our mobile grilling cart, up at the preserve to facilitate some golfer needs and some hot lunches for Mondays and Tuesdays up there. So hopefully we're looking to launch next week, but we'll keep you posted on that. We definitely have some staffing shortages, and I just want to go over that a little bit. Our front of the house staff, we're looking better at this point. However, our back of the house staff is looking very, very short and slim. We're running with a skeleton crew for back of the house for every single restaurant that I have here at SaddleBrooke. So it's it's scary, and it is something that we're going to have to work through. We do have an incentive program out there to entice more employees, and we're working with that on a daily basis to see what and where and when we can get more people. But we are trying. So I'm hoping, as a new chef comes along, typically they bring some of their people, which I'm really hoping will happen. I've been told that he does have some groupies, which is a good sign of a good chef. So hopefully we're moving in a good direction for us. And then, keep on the lookout in your emails, because as soon as he feels comfortable and good to go, we will do a meet and greet. So you're all able to meet the new chef. He's very likable. I can tell you that. So I'm sure you're gonna love him. He has some club experience, so he knows what the club atmosphere is like. So he's excited to meet the residents. He's really, really good guy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan.
Good morning, everyone. So the board asked me to give you some updates on 2 items of concern. Alan kind of hit on the first one, which is our staffing. We are still struggling with staffing, attracting people, keeping people here at SaddleBrooke 2. And the second was COVID. What's going on with COVID? What's going on with masking? So we'll start with the staffing piece. Can you switch a slide, Joey? All right. So this is our current head count and our previous head count. 2021, remember, we were just coming out of the pandemic. So that's what the red line is. The blue line is where we are today. So we are up about 25 people overall since last year, this time, and only up 3 people since the beginning of the year. That's a net. So we've lost people, we've gained people. Let's see. We hired over 100 people last year, 103 to be exact. And so far this year, we have hired 16 folks. So last year we were on track to hire about 8.5 people per month. This year we're trying to hire about 10 people per month. We still have 27 plus postings out there. So if you know anyone who is looking for work, please send them our way. All of our jobs are posted on the sbhoa2.org website under the careers tab, and they can apply right there electronically. So can you switch that? How this breaks down, Alan is absolutely right. Food and beverage is really getting the brunt of our labor shortage. This isn't just at SaddleBrooke too. This is industry-wide. People are leaving the food and beverage hospitality industry in droves. So we are really looking at attracting younger candidates, people that haven't had a chance to get bitter on food and beverage yet, maybe, and trying to pull them in. We're also looking for highly experienced folks. So we will train anyone at the front of the house. They can start as a hostess or a service assistant and work their way up to server. And we are really counting on the new chefs, groupies coming in for the back of the house. We're really looking for talent, cooks, line cooks, prep cooks, any kind of chefs. So the big deficit really are in the restaurants. Otherwise, it's just a 1 and 2 off here and there. All of those positions, like I said, are posted. Common area, I will say, is a little inflated. The report I used to pull this only counts people that had worked hours during that period, 2-week period, payroll period. And we're in between. So we're only down 3 people in common areas, not 5. Otherwise, we are still looking for great people. So how are we going to, the big question is, how are we going to address this? So we are working on really a 2-pronged approach. One is recruitment. Once they get here, we need to retain them. So on the recruitment side, as Alan mentioned, we are offering a referral fee. The best people come in by word of mouth. So for an employee who refers a new employee, we are giving them an incentive, a bonus, as well as the new employee after 90 days of successful completion of work. So we wait 90 days to give both the referring employee and the new employee a little bonus. We are using more social media to market the jobs. We had a new Facebook ad launched this week to attract people and really to help our employees share information about the open positions, because there is an incentive in it for them. So we gave them a tool. And then the third thing really that has been working the best, honestly, is one-on-one connection. I call it poaching employees from other employers, but it's really, you're in a restaurant, you have a great server that night, and you're like, hey, do you know where SaddleBrooke 2 is? Would you like to come work for us? We have a great team. One of the selling points of restaurants, I'll tell you, out there in downtown Tucson, they're open till like 2:00 in the morning. If you work at a restaurant in downtown Tucson, you're getting home about 3:00 in the morning. Here in SaddleBrooke 2, we close things down about 9:00, so you can actually go home and be with your family by 10:00. It sounds small, but it is a really big selling feature for people in the food and beverage world. So if you ever run into someone that's a great server, maybe mention that. We have really great hours. Your regulars are the members. You see us every week. We'll come to your section every week. Those kinds of things. It would mean a lot to new employees to have a big draw from to be pulled in by you as members. So how are we working on retention? We really started some efforts last year to work on retaining our top talent. Some of that is compensation, making sure people are compensated fairly for the work they do, as well as benefits. We introduced an extra day off this year for full-time employees. We're giving full-time employees a day off in the month of their birth. That's gone over really well, and our employees appreciate it. So we're looking at keeping our wages competitive and making sure we offer great benefits. Also, just across our management team, this is a big deal, making this place a great place to work. So it's really our management leading the teams, encouraging our employees, offering opportunities for growth. But it also kind of is up to you as well as members that you, hey, thanks for working here. We appreciate you. Yeah, we are not on the bus line, so it takes people a little extra to get out here. It takes a car, it takes insurance, it takes fuel. So we do ask more than an employee that may be working out on Oracle Road. So just keep that in mind. And again, this year we are working on investing in training and recognition programs. So we were beefing up the recognition. We are rolling out some big safety training this year, and we're continuing to offer growth training and employee educational assistance. So we're working on that. All right. So what about COVID? Okay, so COVID, since the beginning, our big priority here with COVID was to keep our community and team members safe. That has been our battle cry, and that is how we've made our decisions throughout this. Let's see. Looking for that one. So in general, we formulate our employee policies by following the CDC guidelines. They're public, they're available on the web, and we monitor the data from Pinal County, in which we reside, as well as Pima, our neighboring county. That's because a lot of our employees come from Pima County as well. And we have worked really hard to promote safe work practices. Mask wearing, hand washing, sanitizer everywhere, making sure everybody has enough PPE, and encouraging people to stay home when they are sick. I honestly think that this is one of the biggest contributors to us not having a big outbreak here. Knock on wood, we have not lost an employee from COVID during this time. And we have not had any of our employees seriously hospitalized due to COVID. There's a lot of contributing factors, but, you spend a lot of time at work. And if we were not a safe place to work, then I think we would see more evidence of the spread. So what's happening now is you've probably heard a lot of things on the news, January and February. There was an effort to pass some federal law that failed in the Supreme Court. And then that therefore got pushed down to the states. Arizona was prepared for the law to fail or succeed, I suppose. And they put into place a law that sort of supersedes any county or city laws. Now, Pima County and the city of Tucson have mandated some things in their counties and in their cities, like masking. And I know this is the big topic right now, right? Like California is lifting their mask mandate. Pima County is lifting their mask mandate at the end of this month. Tucson, the city of Tucson is lifting their mask mandate. And only requiring masks in government buildings, for instance. It's a great splashy headline to say, like, we're lifting the mask mandate. But underneath that headline is still the CDC guideline that if you're unvaccinated, it's still recommended that you wear a mask. If you have pre-existing conditions or are immunocompromised, they're still recommending that you wear a mask. And the CDC ultimately is recommending that everyone over the age of 5 gets vaccinated and boosted. So that is what's happening there. Another regulation that you may have heard about was the OSHA mandate. This was the attempt at the federal regulation for vaccine testing or masking across the board. That was the ruling that was shot down by SCOTUS. The Supreme Court, and was upheld by the Supreme Court for the healthcare industry. So while we as an HOA or private business do not, there is no rule. How about that? There is no rule by OSHA that mandates that we insist on people masking, vaccine, or testing. As a private business and employer, we can insist on masking, vaccine, or testing. So it is, at the end of the day, it seems like it's like one of those pachinko games things. But at the end of the day, this keeps happening where there's a big effort at the federal level or even a state or county level. And at the end of the day, it ends up in our lap as a private business to decide, do our employees need to mask? Do our employees need to vax? Do our employees need to test? As well as, do our community members need to mask, vax, or test, right? So it ends up back in our laps as a business. All right, let's do some data check here. So just as a reality check, I want to share with you, these are the COVID concerns that we track, that HR tracks at SaddleBrooke 2. I think of our little community here as a little microcosm of the bigger world, the macrocosm. So you will notice this is from like January of last year, 2021, to the current month, February of this year. And it really spiked around December, January this year. And we continue to say, yes, we need to mask. We need to continue to be vigilant. We need to send people home if they're sick. So we continued with our emergency health policy. Concerns that we track, just so we're all clear, if any employee calls in with cold or flu-like symptoms, that's a concern we track. We have a protocol that we follow. If that person reports that they were exposed to a COVID positive person, and this is like a genuine exposure, they live with somebody who's COVID positive, they were visiting relatives, or they were at a party, and you know, everybody was maskless, woo, and someone reported being COVID positive, or that they were confirmed COVID positive. We track every single individual. So 42 people last month, that's nearly a quarter of our workforce, a little under a quarter of our workforce, reported some kind of concern. And a lot of it did stem from the holidays, of course. So this month, we're on track for about 16 this month. Right now, before I left, it was about 9. We had 9 cases that we were tracking, or concerns we were tracking. We are honestly waiting for these concerns to settle down before we make a move on changing our emergency health policy. Our current emergency health policy was revised on January 11th or 10th of this year, and we're standing on that right now. You switch it. And just for bigger context, so Pinal County, I like to look at, this is a view from, I'm thinking it's data now, but this is like the university aspect. This is Georgetown, Harvard, University of Louisville, University of Pennsylvania. And you'll notice Pinal County is still in the very high, where that little yellow circle is, the very high category of like be on high alert. It's not extremely high. There's actually 5 grades, and we're at number 4, the red. There's a higher grade that's called extremely high. And what they do is they basically assess the risk based on the number of transmissions, the number of new cases, and the daily case count, the infection rate, and the positive test rate. So they compile this data, and they kind of put it on that scale from 1 to 5. Pima County is the same, similar. There you go. Pima County is pretty close. Transmission rate is up there, and they are also in the very high category. So where do we want to be? If you go to the next slide, we really want to be in that green and yellow before we say to our employees, hey, it's time to make your choice whether you want to continue to wear a mask or not. That's really what we're targeting. And I think with the drop in this, in the number of cases that we've seen a pretty extreme drop. Omicron kind of came in like a lion, and hopefully it'll go out like a lamb, right? But we saw a lot of cases up front, and now it seems to be dropping off. So when we can look at Pinal County and Pima County and see that we're on that low end of the risk factor, the risk chart, we will modify our emergency health policy and make masks optional. How's that? All right. I think that is all I have for you. If you have any questions, need any further information, there's my contact information. Please feel free to reach out and stay safe. Sure. I think if that's okay with the board.
Relevant to the conversation. Yes, if it's relevant to the conversation. If you could come up to the mic, thank you.
There's a mic right there. Oh.
Mike, could you please state your name and unit number?
This is a great idea. We actually have a running ad in the Monday Message that links to all of our openings. About a third of our workforce is community members. So instead of asking you to volunteer your time, we actually will pay you to work these positions. And there is some rules around workers' comp that if you are performing a job that's covered under workers' comp, we do have to pay your wage. But I love where you're going with that. And we actually opened up golf course maintenance last year to get some community members on the golf course mowing the greens, and that's worked out really well. Some of our departments, like patrol, is, I would say, 100% staffed by community members. Our golf operations department, pretty close to 100% staffed by community members. So we couldn't run this place without community members, for sure. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Laurie.
Can I ask a question before she sits down? Sorry,
Sure.
Laurie.
Sure.
In last year, we in the finance committee and as well as the board worked very hard to adjust or put money in the budget to adjust wages to try and get more competitive than we thought we were before that. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly the specifics of each job, but essentially it was trying to get to a $15 an hour rate and maybe even higher on some jobs. I'm not sure. I guess the question is this continual need for finding new employees. I know that's kind of normal in F&B, but I just was curious if you believe that the package we offer today, specifically in the wage side, I think our benefits look really well, but in the wage side, are we competitive enough, or are we going to be on this treadmill for a long time? And that's really probably a hard question, but I'm just curious what your response would be.
I'm afraid we're going to be on the treadmill a little while longer. We saw a cost of living increase in December of last year, like 7%. So our general, I think our average increase in wages was like 5%, 5.35% actually. So our wage increases as much as we really pushed for that and everything. It was good. It kept some people in place, but we are probably going to be back this year. Like, okay, now we have to be more competitive. I am participating in a benchmarking study with the other HOAs We should have that data by the end of March. So we'll see what they're also paying. And we will just have to look at it job by job and say, okay, we're not paying this job classification enough.
Good.
But I know across the board, we've increased wages.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And Terry Dempsey from our Director of Finance will be coming up to give his report.
Good morning. Hope everybody's awake on this cold, dreary day, but it'll pass. So we're going to go over December's highlights, financial highlights this morning. So to get started, our income before depreciation for the month of December was $19,000 better than budget, primarily due to the receipt of insurance claim payment of approximately $115,000. It was attributable to the storm we had over Labor Day. This was partially, the income was partially offset by lower golf revenues. So we had, for the year, we had $712,000 in net operating income against a budget of $307,000. And prior year, we were at $382,000, so an increase. Income before depreciation year to date through December was $354,000, better than budget, reflecting the insurance claim payment, lower facilities and common area expenses, and increased golf subsidy. Our other income in December, again, the insurance claim we received for $115,000 related to the damage on Labor Day. And year-to-date other income also included higher transfer fees than budgeted due to higher home sales. So you can go ahead and switch. You go ahead and flip the screen. So this screen is showing us what our amenities did and how we did. Our golf was at $3 million on revenue at 51%, and our F&B was $2.6 million, made up 45% of what our revenue was. Also, fitness came in at $126,000 or 2%, and theater was $105,000 at 2%. So that's our year-to-date revenues. You guys switch next screen. Number of lots, our total build out for SaddleBrooke 2 would be 3,293 to be completely done. December year to date was life to date was at 3,109, so it's 94% complete. 2021, the projection was to be at 114. There was 25 new homes for 2021. And for 2022, we budgeted for 25 new homes coming through. Resales in December, we were at a gross of 253. We budgeted 186 for 2022. And 2021 year-end projection was for 220. So we came in at about 33 in addition to what we had projected. So, okay, you could change it. This is how the amenities did. Restaurants had a subsidy of $453,000, and golf had a subsidy of $613,000 for 2021. Budget for restaurants was a subsidy of $401, and budget for golf was $464. Those are the big items that we just look at. So for restaurants, restaurant subsidy was over budget both for the month at $30,000 and year to date $52,000. These are attributable to the Mountain View restaurants. The Mesquite restaurant was closed due to the pandemic until November 26th. Budget assumptions were for an earlier reopening and for a faster increase in business, and reduced revenue of $318,000 for the year was somewhat offset by reduced costs of goods sold of $91,000. and reduced labor costs of $79,000. The reduced labor costs have to do with what Laurie was talking about as far as not having enough employees basically to fill the positions. Preserve Restaurant showed a faster recovery and was right on budget for the year. So you can, next slide. This kind of shows the trend and how we were doing through the year. You see golf tapers off in the hot months of April and May through September and start picking up in November. And F&B is the blue line. It's kind of starting to pick up again and dropped a little bit in December, but we'll see that increase as things open up. As we've seen it in January as the Mesquite opened up in November. So things are starting to look better there. Okay, next slide. So for wages, we ended the year at $5,020,000 in wages on a budget of $5,163,000. Our burden it came in at $1,202,000 on a budget of $1,211,000, which was about 24% what our wages were. And just to clarify, burden is basically all of our payroll taxes, which is Social Security, the employer side of Social Security, any state taxes we have to pay, and then also any workers' comp taxes and 401k, the employer match on that. Okay. So next slide, please. This just shows you by department how we did it against our wages. As you see, some of the wages look pretty comparable to what the budget was. But again, wages are low, not as a management, keeping the wages low. It's basically not having enough employees. So what we budget is fully staffed, and obviously we're not fully staffed yet. So, okay, next. So our operating expenses for the year kind of shows we're trying to maintain without going over the previous years. In some cases we can do that. Other cases, it's just a necessity that we have to spend the money. General and admin, we stayed around $1.9 million for this year. For facilities, we're about $1.4 million. Last year was $1.7 million. That says budget. I'm sorry, I should say actual. 2021 actual. In common area, we're at $950,000, and that's down from $1 million from last year. And patrol is pretty steady at $297,000. So we do try to keep control of our expenses. Food and beverage costs. Food was at $195,000, was 49% as our food costs, and for the year. That was for the month. For the year, we're at $2 million, and that's 40%. January, we looked at, and I think it was around 33 to 35% now. So I think Alan's doing a good job of controlling that and getting that back in line. Beverage, we're at 26% for December and 30% year to date. And also, I'd like to put up there is what we give as employee discounts, which is part of the benefit package that Laurie talked about. And then there's also a happy hour discount. So kind of shows you where all your money's going and what we're using the money for. So okay, next. So for golf, cold and rainy weather in December resulted in reduced revenue for the month at both courses. For the year, Mountain View subsidy was $186,000, which was $10,000 more than budget. While revenue exceeded budget by $155,000, this was offset by higher labor costs for both operations and maintenance, and higher costs for seed, sod, and pro shop goods. The preserve subsidy for the year was $439,000, which was $122,000 more than budget. Revenue was under budget by $117,000, primarily due to lower daily green fees. It should be a lower amount of usage, basically, is what it is, just the green fees. Labor costs for both operations and maintenance were less than budget, and this was offset by higher side costs. So the number of annuals for golf for 2022 so far was 300, I'm sorry, if you go back one, was 366 compared to a total of 397 for 2021. So we'll see some more still coming in as the year progresses. Punch cards were 171 compared to 291. And casual golfers were 23 compared to 84. Revenue was $1.6 million compared to $1.7 million from last year. But this isn't final yet, so this is still moving. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the Golf Improvement Fund, we have $112,000 on the books. There's about $700, $800 remaining to be spent, so that at December 31st was $111,456. A couple other things for fitness, theater, and lifestyle. Month and year-to-date performance by the three departments were better than budget. Fitness with $117,000 subsidy for the year was better than budget by $50,000, reflecting a faster return to fitness classes. And theater showed a profit of $40,000, which was $26,000 better than budget. Well, theater reopening was later than anticipated in the budget, resulting in lower revenue. Costs for labor and marketing were also lower than budget. Within G&A, for the year, G&A costs were $1,987,000, $67,000 more than budget. The largest variance from the budget was the IT costs, which were at about $39,000 more than budget. There's a couple of things that made that up. CenturyLink is our internet provider. They increased their rates, and another part of CenturyLink is their subsidiary called Lumen, and they had installed 3 fiber optic lines at a cost of like $4,000 per month. That was done at the beginning of the year. Sorry? I think we're done with the slides. I was just reading through some of the extra comments I had. So, okay. So for facilities, for the year, facilities costs were at $1,507,000 and $234,000 less than budget. Labor costs were $56,000 lower than budget. Utility costs were less than budget, particularly electricity at $48,000 and pool natural gas about $23,000 less than budget. Cleaning services and janitorial expenses were less than budgeted by $64,000 and $35,000 respectively. This is basically due to a budget issue we had with facilities. We've corrected that, and it should be right going in 2022. Also, facility had difficulty hiring employees due to hourly rates and such, as Laurie had previously mentioned. So that's a recap of the year, and that's all I have for now. Good.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, we're moving on to the business meeting. The first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the November 17, 2021 board meeting. Before I call for a motion, I just want to mention that at this time, only 2 of us who are current board members were at that board meeting and acted as board members. The other 5 individuals who are now board members were not a part of the board at that time. However, just for a point of information, those minutes were reviewed and edited and returned to our recording secretary. So just for purposes of understanding, you understand that they are correct at this time. So may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the November 17, 2021 board meeting?
I move to approve the minutes of the November 17th meeting.
Second.
And we have a second. It is moved and seconded. Is there any discussion among board members? Any discussion from members? There being no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No, the motion is passed. The next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of our January 26th, 2022 working board meeting. May I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of the January 26, 2022 meeting.
And a second. It is moved and seconded. Is there any discussion among the board? Any discussion among members? There being none, no further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion is passed. We're going to new business. We're doing something a little different with board meetings this year. As you know, we have, a number of committees that help the board fulfill their duties. And this year, what we'll be doing at our board meetings is asking two of the different committee chairs to give us a report or an update on what's happening in their committees. So we're going to start, first of all, with Vicki Eller and the Architectural Committee update.
Good morning. I have found that working on the ALC committee can be an immensely rewarding experience, and I can find that it's also very frustrating. For instance, finding a pile of rocks in the street can be a really aggravating experience. But occasionally we have flashes of comic relief, and the help wanted sign in the top of the pile here did it for me on that particular day. I remember the first time that I had visited SaddleBrooke, and when I left Oracle Road, it seemed like I drove forever. And you crested the hill, and wow, here's this beautiful community. You see the trees, you see the mountains, the clean streets. It seemed like utopia. And I know other people have expressed the same kind of feeling to me and the same kind of experience. And for many people, that first impression had a strong influence on why they purchased their home here. People purchase homes in covenant-controlled communities for many reasons. They like the amenities, they like the location, they like the views, but they also know that the positives of that community come with responsibilities, rules, and regulations. They know that property owners have a requirement to maintain their homes. They know there won't be junk cars in the driveway or streets. There won't be trash in the yards. And they have a certain comfort knowing that despite the similarities in appearance of some of the houses, the property values are likely to rise over time because there are standards and guidelines that are required in the governing documents. The ALC exists to preserve the aesthetics of the community and to help ensure that your property values are preserved or improved. Slide 2, please. The Architecture and Landscape Committee, ALC, is a standing committee of the Board of Directors. It's required by and described in the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, the CC&Rs. Those CC&Rs and the ALC guidelines set standards for improvements and maintenance that apply to all private property of the residents of SaddleBrooke 2. The ALC administers those guidelines and requirements under the direction of the Board of Directors. Next slide. The CC&Rs devote a significant amount of space detailing the scope and the ALC jurisdiction and responsibilities. This is not a complete list, but it hits the high points. First of all, we administer those ALC guidelines under the direction of the board. We review and update those requirements and guidelines on a regular basis. It's an ongoing process as new issues arise or topics need clarification, and sometimes things need to be eliminated. We prepare and approve permits, and in that process, we strive to help homeowners achieve their goals for their property and yet stay within the guidelines and the CC&Rs. We conduct site visits if it's required. Some projects like pools or spas or casitas, golf cart garages require an on-site visit. It helps us determine if all of the concerns or issues are covered before construction begins and gives us a visual reference if questions arise later. We perform permit verifications when a project is completed. After the permit is expired, we do a verification visit so that we know that the project is complete and that the permit can be closed. We do real estate disclosures. When a home that is for sale receives an offer and the purchaser secures a title company, the ALC receives an HOA demand request. And we subsequently check the property and the lot records for guideline violations or any other issues, and we visually check the property to be sure that required elements are present. We respond to homeowner complaints and we issue notices of violations when the need occurs. We collaborate monthly with HOA 1 ALC, and we've done that roughly for 3 years. The first project that we did together was to unify the paint colors between the two HOAs. Our goal basically is to identify common issues between the HOAs and to unify the guidelines wherever possible. And we maintain property records on every lot and unit in HOA 2. Next slide. These are just brief statistics. They cover the past 4 months. So as a point of comparison, in January of 2021, we did 63 permits. We had 2 initial landscapes, and we did 15 disclosures. At that time, we had 11 members to cover the workload, and now we're down to 8. The paperwork and the permits previously done at our weekly face-to-face meetings with homeowners are now done electronically and done in teams. Like much of our life, our work has been impacted by COVID, and we've done our best to try and adapt to the new demands. Next slide. We've established goals for the coming year. The perpetual review and revision of the requirements and guidelines. We've been working on this for the past few months, and we will complete the process soon. And any changes will go out for review, of course. We review and update the policies and procedures manual to reflect current practices. We have, because of COVID and the electronic documents, we have changed how things are handled since the last review. The big challenge, I think, for us is recruiting people to serve on the committee. As I mentioned, we have a 15-member capacity and we're operating with 8. And our last goal is to explore ways to ensure that the ALC documentation on property records are protected from loss. So all these goals will certainly require our attention and our energy. And what it means overall is that we're just really, really busy. The ALC committee is comprised of homeowners, your friends and neighbors, who have an interest in architecture and landscaping and a commitment to maintaining the standards in our community. They volunteer their time and their energy to make that happen. Currently, the committee is comprised of 8 members, and like most committees, we're seeking additional members. If you have questions about what we do, or you think you might be interested in joining, I encourage you to explore the opportunity to be part of the team. It's a great way to give back to our community and an opportunity to meet all the wonderful people who live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. And now we'll move on to the Finance Committee update with Pat Lenz.
While Pat's coming up, I'll just remind everybody that we're looking for volunteers in just about every committee. Each one of them is down a few. And if you're interested, and I'm sure you all are, you're here to hear about how you can volunteer. I know you are. You can go on our website. There's a volunteer form that you can fill out, and it will get sent to the right people that are more than happy to give you a call and talk through the idea of volunteering at whatever committee you may be interested in. So I'll just kind of follow up what Vicki was saying, that if you're interested in ALC or finance or other committees, we really look forward to having you volunteer your time here for the HOA. So anyway, welcome, Pat.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The Finance Committee is one of the standing committees of HOA2, and we meet regularly every month. The purpose of the committee is to review financial data and provide information and recommendations to the board regarding most financial matters. We also work with staff at the direction of the board. Some of the things the committee does is we review the monthly financial statements and reported variances at our monthly meeting, always the third Thursday of the month, that like tomorrow. Reviews and makes recommendations to the board about new financial policies and procedures, as well as suggesting updates to the existing ones. We support the board and management during the development of the reserve study. Every 3 years, an outside consulting company surveys all the assets of the association, determines the expected remaining life and replacement costs of all items. The purpose of this is to ensure that there are adequate reserve funds set aside for the next 30 years to cover expected replacements. Next week, reserve advisors will begin the updating of our current reserve study, which was last completed in 2019. In addition, a road survey study was conducted last year, which will be incorporated into the final results. Each year, we work beside the staff in the development of next year's budget. This process looks at not only expenses and revenues for the various departments, but also reviews requested purchases from homeowners, clubs, and staff. The budget includes a 5-year plan. This plan will be updated this year as we are 3 years into the old 5-year plan, and much has happened in that time period. Within the Finance Committee, there is also an investment subcommittee. The subcommittee, in conjunction with HOA2's outside investment advisors and custodian, Schwab, makes recommendations to the treasurer on investment of HOA2 funds, both the reserve and the CIF. They provide quarterly reports to the Finance Committee, and their reports are available to members. The committee is charged to review the insurance requirements and coverage of the association and submit recommendations to the board. We review the past performance and professional standing of the association's independent auditors, recommend to the board retention of the current firm, or solicit proposals, conduct reviews, and recommend another firm. We review with the independent auditor any difficulties encountered during the audit and the auditor's management letter recommendations. We make recommendations to the board on any needed corrective actions. Some of the fun stuff we're doing this year are the reserve study, and that begins next week. The 2021 audit has already begun with preliminary work. The 2022 financial statements, Terry's just presented us with January's results. 2023 budget and the 5-year plan revision do not have a defined timeline at this moment, but will be happening shortly. And as mentioned earlier, there will be a software conversion this year, club management idea there that Walter talked about. And obviously that will affect the Finance Committee because we're the ones that use the reports that are coming off the new system. The Finance Committee right now can have 9 members. We have 8. So like all other committees, we are happy to look at anybody who would like to volunteer, and we'll find a way to fit you in. We're looking for experience specifically on P&L responsibilities, financial analysis, financial planning, and accounting experience. So if you're interested, please fill out the volunteer form that you can find on the HOA2 website. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Moving along, we'll have a report from our treasurer, Joyce Howard.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I am going to talk today about the cash and investments in the various HOA2 funds. I will cover how the money is invested and our current forecast for expenditures from the reserve and the CIF funds. This here is showing you sort of a picture of all of the funds that we have. And currently we have about $12 million in the three funds. This is cash and investments. So we have an operating fund, a reserve fund, and a capital improvement fund. And I will talk about each of these because they each have their own special purpose. Next slide, please. Okay, the operating fund. This is what pays for all of our ongoing expenses. Administration, facilities, common areas, patrol. It also covers amenity subsidies. So the restaurants, golf, food and fitness, etc. This is primarily funded by our dues, also known as community service fees or property owner assessments, but basically it's funded by our dues. The operating fund has checking accounts and savings accounts, but it does not have any investments. The balance at the end of 2021 was just about $5 million. That's a little bit high because we'd collected some of our dues at that point in time, and also golf annuals and golf play cards. So that's kind of the high point for the year for the operating fund. Next slide, please. The reserve fund. The reserve fund pays for replacements of our existing assets and also major repairs to those assets. So it covers, our equipment, the new roof, that type of thing. It also covers repairs and major reworking on our roads. Funding for the reserve fund comes from two places, both of which are approved by the board during the budget process. So it comes from our dues, so a particular amount will be allocated, and for 2022, that amount is about $2.5 million. And it also comes from the community improvement fees. These are the fees that are collected on home resales. So a portion of that is always allocated to the reserve fund, and a portion is allocated to the capital improvement fund, which I'll talk about in a minute. So the portion that's coming from that fund to the reserve fund for 2022 is 25% of those collections. The reserve fund has checking and savings accounts, but there are also investments that are held at Schwab that I believe that Pat had mentioned. And in those Schwab accounts, we have CDs, U.S. Treasuries, money market funds, and some corporate bonds. The balance at the end of the year was a total of $5.4 million. 1.1 was in checking and savings for the anticipated items that would be coming due, and 4.3 was with Schwab in investment accounts. Next slide, please. Okay. The Capital Improvement Fund was something that was approved a few years ago, and its purpose is to acquire major assets or expand existing facilities to provide a benefit to the community. The funding, as I mentioned, comes from the community improvement fees, that is from the home resales. And again, this is determined during the budget process how much will go to this fund versus the reserve fund. The CIF fund has a checking account, and it also has investments at Schwab's in CDs, U.S. Treasuries, and money market funds. The balance at the end of the year was at $1.6 million. About $400,000 was in the checking account, and $1.2 million was in the investment accounts with Schwab. Next slide, please. This is the forecast for the reserve fund expenditures by quarter. So you can see that first quarter is kind of a big one. And part of the reason for that is there were a number of projects that are carried over from 2021 into 2022. And what I mean by that is some projects were begun during the year, but they weren't completed. So, for example, the biggest thing that's in there is road work that was started last year, that was mostly completed last year, but there were still a few things to wrap up. And so there's about $330,000 in that first quarter to wrap up and pay for that road work. There's also a lot of major expenditures in there. The roofs at Mountain View, and one of the things Walter had mentioned was the new ballroom air walls are in there for about $110,000. The total expenditures for the year are expected to be about $4.6 million, and that includes the carryover expenditures, which are about $770,000. So it's a really big year for us on capital expenditures coming out of the reserve fund. And this timing right here, what we're showing is how the projects are scheduled. Of course, things change, and so it will probably not end up exactly like this, but this is our look at it right now. Next slide, please. Okay, so how is all of that going to affect the balances in the reserve fund? Because that's quite a lot of expenditures out there. So that's what this chart is trying to portray. So you can see the blue bars, those are the checking and savings accounts. And the orange bars are the investments, and the gray bars are the total of the two. So you can see that as we look at, let me see if I can point this out. As we look here, this is the balance as of the end of the year. And you can see that when we look at the investments, there's really no change here to 331, because what's down here in our checking and savings we think is going to be able to cover that, along with the first half of the dues that gets allocated to the reserve fund. But when we get to the second quarter, at that point in time, we are going to have to liquidate some of our investments to pay for all of the reserve expenditures that are out here. And we're estimating that that's going to be about $900,000 that we're going to have to liquidate there if these projects come in as were scheduled on the previous chart. So that would come out of CDs that we have maturing in May, and a reduction in some of our cash and money market funds, but we'll also be having some U.S. Treasuries that will be rolling over, so we will not roll over all of that. We will use some of that to pay for these expenditures. So if you're a numbers person, what we're looking at here for the whole year is we have about $5.4 million in the reserve funds at the beginning of the year. The dues allocation portion is about $2.5 million. On top of that, we will also be adding here the CIF allocation, which is about $133,000 as estimated. And our expenditures, as I said, was $4.6 million, which will leave us a balance at the end of the year of about $3.5 million. So you can see this. So this spike here is going to be when the second half of the dues gets pumped in. So we'll be going down during the year to cover these expenditures, but we'll still have reserve money available for the next year's projects. Next slide, please. This is showing the composition of the reserve funds. So you can see the big blue slice there is the cash and savings accounts there. And what's happened here is that over the last year, couple years, as certain investments mature, CDs, treasuries, we have not been able to find good places to put those that would return a good investment. So they've been sitting in cash in the investment accounts for a while. So we've taken a look at that and we said, well, interest rates are going up. Maybe we can do a little bit better here. So we had talked to our advisors and they have pointed out that U.S. Treasuries are currently paying a little bit better than CDs. So we've decided to move some of that cash into U.S. Treasuries. Next slide, please. So these will be in short-term U.S. Treasuries, which will provide us a small return. The interest rates are still not great, but they are expected to rise over the near term here. So we've been thinking that we would go with short-term investments so that as the interest rate environment changes, we'll have the flexibility to move our cash into something that will return a little bit better. And we also intend to hold these in treasuries to maturity in order to prevent any loss in principal. So what we've done, and this was actually done in the early part of February, is we've invested in 3-month and 6-month T-bills and 9-month and 12-month treasury notes. And you can see the amounts and the expected returns up there and the maturity date. So in total, about $2.5 million has been moved into U.S. treasuries. Next slide, please. So this is the composition after. So you can see that the blue slice is now considerably less, and we have a big green slice there for the U.S. treasuries. And the corporate bonds, which is the yellow, well, kind of a crummy looking yellow, and the gray for the CDs, those are still the same. Those have not changed at all. So this is still the same picture of what it looks like now after we've made those investments. Next slide, please. Moving on to the Capital Improvement Fund. This is the forecast for the expenditures by quarter. And we have two big pieces here. In the first quarter, we're anticipating the pickleball construction that we have agreed to help fund that for a total of $310,000. And in the third quarter, we have the budgeted amount for the structures for the golf carts, and that's for about $329,000. Again, this is the forecasted timing right now, and this could change as things develop. Next slide, please. And here's the same kind of chart as the reserve for the balance for the CIF fund. Same thing, the blue is the cash in the checking accounts. The orange is the investments with Schwab, and the total is in gray. So as we look at this, we are anticipating that the cash that's in the checking accounts will be able to cover the expenditures for the year once we add in the expected CIF resale fees that will go in here. So you'll see the investment is constant throughout here. We've done the same thing on the CIF fund with the U.S. Treasuries. So we have also moved some of the cash. Let's move to the next slide, please. So this is before we moved. So you can see a great big blue slice there for the cash and a smaller amount for money market for the total of 1.6. Next slide, please. And here's what it looks like after we've done that. So the green is the U.S. Treasuries, and the blue is the cash that will be available for the projects that are coming up. And again, we put those into the same types of treasuries: short-term, 3, 6, 9, and 12 months, with more of it being in the 3-month. Next slide, please. Okay, in summary. Considering the estimated timing of the expenditures, a portion of the reserve fund short-term investments at estimated about $900,000 will need to be liquidated somewhere around the end of the second quarter to help to cover those expenditures. Again, depending upon the timing. The CIF cash balances are expected to be sufficient to cover the projects during the year without having to dip into the investments. And of course, the timing of these can change. So moving the funds from cash and money market funds to short-term treasury investments will provide a small return, maybe $15,000 on the reserve fund, maybe $5,000 on the CIF, and will allow for flexibility to adjust investments, the investment mix, as interest rate environment changes. And that concludes my briefing. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. The next item on the agenda is to approve the 2022 committee goals for the Architectural Landscape Committee, the Finance Committee, the Golf Committee, and the Unit Rep Committee. May I have a motion
So moved.
and a second? It is moved and seconded. Is there any discussion among board members? Any discussion among members at large? There being no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried. The next item is to approve Shirley Dunbar to the Fitness, Wellness, and Recreation Committee. May I have a motion? And a second? It is moved and seconded. Is there any discussion among the board members? Any discussion among members at large? There being no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is to approve Bob Kalinda and Sharon Beckman to the SaddleBrooke Public Affairs Commission. May I have a motion? Dan?
I'd like to approve Bob and Sharon to the SaddleBrooke Public Affairs Commission for 2022.
May I have a second? The motion is moved and seconded. Any discussion among board members? Among members at large? There being no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is to approve the revised volunteer coordinator charter. Just as a point of reference, there were the initial charter was written in 2015, and we just felt it was time to update it a little bit. This allows for there to be more than one volunteer coordinator, and it changed some verbiage of who the coordinator would pass information on to, simply because as time has gone on, those people have changed duties. May I have a motion to approve the revised charter for the volunteer coordinator? May I have a second? The motion is moved and seconded. Is there any discussion among board members? Any discussion among members at large? There being no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is to approve Joanne Johnson and Maureen Spence as volunteer coordinators for the HOA. May I have a motion? May I have a second? It is moved and seconded. Is there any discussion among board members? Any discussion among members at large? There being no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion is passed. The last item on the agenda is the one I mentioned as an addition to the agenda, and this is to approve the 2022 board goals. For those members in the audience, at our initial working meeting of this new board in early January, we had come up with a list of possible goals. That list was weaned. Some things we felt were simply duties that the board needed to carry on versus things that are goals, which we feel are sometimes a stretch. So the goals for the board for 2022 are to revise the annual budget development policy, to develop a board member communication protocol, to explore and possibly develop a credit card service fee policy, to establish a strategic planning task force with the specific goal of developing a strategic plan, oversee the work of the task force, and revitalize the strategic planning process. The fifth goal is to ensure license agreements are up to date and in compliance with our CC&Rs. And the last goal is to oversee the Mountain View Golf Course renovation contract award process. This needs for us to develop a prudent plan for funding the project by evaluating different funding options, including possible financing of a portion of the project and considering the overall financial implications to the homeowners association. May I have a motion to approve the 2022 board goals?
I move we approve the 2022 board.
May I have a second? It is moved and seconded. Any discussion among board members? Any discussion among members at large? There being no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Hey, Trees, could I take a second?
Sure.
I just want to remind everybody, we've had the pleasure of seeing a lot of this, obviously, before the meeting, specifically the committee goals and other things that we just voted on. I want to remind everyone, though, that all of this information will be posted online on our HOA2 website. So you'll be able to view committee goals, the charter for the volunteer coordinators. That information will be posted online, and you'll be able to see that. But it wasn't available to you today to look at. But just want to remind you that all of this information is current online. And it's really important that you keep up with that because things do change, but staff does a great job of keeping all of that information as current as possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, just some announcements coming up. The first announcement I'd like to make, and you may have seen this in an e-blast that went out, but for those of you who don't subscribe to some of the HOA e-blasts, with regard to filling the vacancy for our executive director position, the board has hired an executive search firm that specializes in club management and HOAs. And that firm is Copland, Kubler, and Wallace. Last week, a representative from their company spent time with 3 of the board members and toured the facilities. They also he also met with the senior management team to get their input on what they would like to see in their executive director. And they also sent a survey to all board members asking us our input on what the areas that we felt were most important to our community in selecting our new executive director. This entire process is probably going to take anywhere from 60 to 120 days. This isn't as much as we would like to fill the position. This is a very, this is a huge position, and we feel as if we need to give it the time that this company says it will take to ensure that we select the candidate that's going to be the best fit for our association. So I just wanted to bring everybody up to date on that. And once again, if you hadn't read that email blast, Walter is filling in as in that role during the interim. And before Damon left, that senior management team did meet with Damon, and they have ensured how the responsibilities are being divided up among the senior management team to ensure that nothing falls through the cracks. And we're very happy with how things will move along.
I just want to say that I am highly optimistic that we're going to get a really excellent candidate to replace Damon. So I want you all also to be confident that this is going to be a very good process and we're going to end up with a very good person in the end.
Thank you. Actually, we interviewed 3 different firms before we chose the firm that we wanted to go with. And hands down, the 3 the three members of the initial search committee are Joe, myself, and Joyce. And hands down, all three of us, once we'd interviewed these three different companies, it was unanimous on the company that we chose to go with. So we're pretty excited. A few other announcements. The next executive director coffee is scheduled for Wednesday, March 2nd in the West Ballroom at 10:30. In 2021, we had a task force, the Multi-Use Activity Center Task Force, and they're ready to make their town hall presentation for their findings. And that is tentatively scheduled for March 9th of this year, and you will get more information on that as the date gets closer. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting is May 18th. Stay on the lookout, though, because we anticipate at least one or two working board meetings that deal with just a particular topic to come up within the next month. And the next for the record distribution is at the end of this month on February 28th. That being said, I move to adjourn the meeting. So moved. I don't think I have to do that. I'm sorry, it's been, a few years since I've been doing this. So the meeting is now adjourned. We'll now go into our member comments period. This is, as I mentioned earlier, if you have comments or questions, please come and use one of the two microphones, state your name and your unit number, and you have 2 minutes. Thank you. And if there are multiple people, we ask that you go to the end of the line after your first question. Thank you.
Okay, thank us again.
Okay, thank you. I just want to thank the board and all the members for all the time and effort you put into your endeavor here. It's really seems like an overwhelming task, and we live in a real nice place. So I wanted to know that you're appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. That's very nice. Okay, it looks like we're done. Thank you all for joining us today.